Welcome to That Entrepreneur Life, a podcast about entrepreneurship that takes you from idea to launch and beyond. Each week, your hosts, Andrew Lees and Clint McPherson, discuss different business topics aimed at adding value to any entrepreneur's journey.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of That Entrepreneur Life. I'm Andrew Lees, and I got my co-host here, Clint McPherson. What's up, man? How you doing today?
Good, man. Everything's going awesome. New week. We've got a very special guest on the show today. He's the principal patent attorney for Blue Iron IP and has a business model that allows his clients to pay nothing up front to file their patent. So you're definitely going to want to stick around and learn more. Before I introduce our special guest today, I want to remind you to subscribe to our podcast, to our mailing list, through our website, so that you don't miss out on all the free resources we have to help you start and grow your business. With that said, I'd like to welcome our guest today, Russ Krajec, to the show. How you doing, man?
It's good to be here.
Yeah, great to have you, Russ. Definitely awesome for you to be on the show. And we're looking forward to digging into our questions here. We'll just kind of let it roll organically, and I'm sure we'll have some great conversation.
Fire away.
So Russ, I mean, every guest we've had on the show, this is one of the throwback questions that we always try to drive home first, because we think it's important and it matches and goes along with our podcast, That Entrepreneur Life. Can you take us back, our audience back, to when your actual entrepreneurial journey started and what it is about entrepreneurship that really gets you fired up every day?
Well, I always knew that I wanted to run my own business. And I started delivering newspapers back when I was, 11 or 12. It was every morning I'd get up, load up the bicycle and go door to door, dropping off newspapers all around the neighborhood, and then come back on Friday afternoons and collect. And if I did a good job, people tipped. Of course, there's always that one lady who never gave you a dime. We're talking about back in the day, a whole week, 7 days of service was $1.25 for the whole. It wasn't.
Man, that's crazy
back in the day. But I really understood the idea of doing it well. If you did it well, people appreciated it, and they paid you. The tips were definitely worth it. And you'd hear one person talk to their neighbor about, oh yeah, you ought to get the newspaper from Russ because he's reliable. Papers show up dry, they show up on time. And
not going to bust through your window or something at 5 in the morning.
I was like walking up to the front door and putting it in between the screen door and the regular door.
Oh, this is amazing service.
Well, as they don't do that anymore, but I got some gray hair. And then that was always something I wanted to do, is run my own business of some sort. And I didn't know what it's going to be. Became an engineer, worked in humongous companies, Hewlett Packard, McDonnell Douglas, and did a little bit, always looking for that idea. And I knew it'd come eventually. I didn't know where and I didn't know when, but I'd been through the patent process a few times as an engineer at a big company where, they hired outside patent counsel to do all the work. And I got the nice little bonus check, which was cool. But I had an invention of my own and I wanted to license it. And I go to this patent attorney who's on my hockey team, and the guy fleeces me for $5,000 to do 2 really bad searches. And I was furious. So I happened to have a friend who is going to take the patent bar exam. And as an engineer, you can sit for the patent bar, become a patent agent. So took the exam and wound up working for that attorney for about 3 years. And as that was kind of my apprenticeship into the patent business. But I knew he was the crook. And so, I knew I was never going to work for him for the next 30 years or anything like that. But I absorbed everything I could.
Right.
I looked at every aspect of how does he find client? How do you number the files? How do you set up the files? What's the procedures about everything, and how did the whole back office work? I wanted to absorb all that. And then I eventually went to law school when I think I was 38, and he dorked with my pay one last time. And I'm like, okay, I'll go solo.
Yeah.
And
okay.
I've been solo for a long time, do the math, 20 years, and it's the best. I don't know. We were talking about this earlier. Being an entrepreneur, you have to come to terms with the stress of it.
Yeah.
The stress of, oh, will I get paid next week?
Yep.
Or, I did all the work that I have, and I don't know if any new work is going to show up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. That's just a new normal. That's just what you get. You go through the phase of restless, sleepless nights for a while. And then you realize that, hey, you just do everything you can do to make sure that you've got consistent business, and then that's it. But yeah, absolutely. Sometimes you're looking 1 or 2 months down the road and you're not really sure what's going to happen. Then you get to the point where you're like, all right, it is what it is,
I don't know. That took me 15 years to figure that out.
Yeah.
Like I was always stressed. Okay. I'm going to run out of work. What am I going to do next? I got to go out and hustle up some business. I got to be hustling. And, that's a way of life that, I finally kind of got to I'm far older than you, but it took me forever to figure this out of, just take a deep breath. It'll show up. Make sure you're doing, kind of my motto is show up and do the next right thing.
Yeah. Sure.
Make sure you put your back into it. Make sure you're, putting the effort in, and just figure out what's the next plan to do.
Yeah.
In my current business, I've been doing a lot of marketing and outreach, and maybe I'm a slow learner, but it took me a while to really figure out that if I could do outbound marketing or marketing in whatever form, if I could get new customers, new clients, I got a job for life.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And so get good at that.
Oh, without a doubt.
Understanding that, do a good website, do good outreach, have good stories to tell, and so on. That really, I don't know, got me going, in kind of the, just keeps me motivated. Oh yeah. Just keep laying down, laying down the marketing.
Right.
And hopefully somebody will call.
Yeah, for sure. I really think at the end of the day, it's all about positioning, right? I mean, you got to utilize what you've learned. You got to utilize any technique, whether it's outbound marketing, inbound, whether it's cold outreach, whatever it is that works, that you've tried. And if you haven't tried, you need to try it. Email marketing. I mean, everything matters. Your audience could be on social, and it's all about positioning yourself as that subject matter expert, or as that person that knows what this, whatever niche you're in. It doesn't matter. It's just like you position yourself to get that client, line yourself up. And like both of you just described, you're wondering, maybe what's happening next week. Nobody's lined up, because when I'm done with this client, I have nobody else on the books. So I really think, as entrepreneurs, as we hustle, but as we learn, it's so important to continue to, remind ourselves to not stop doing what got you where you're at. Just keep refining and tinkering everything, because you're in your position for a reason, right? And I believe everything's meant and everything happens for a reason. So
I'm with you there. One of the experiences I had was I had years ago, I'd posted like one or two things on LinkedIn and hadn't really done it much.
Right.
And then some guy gives me a call and he says, "Hey, I saw your thing on LinkedIn and I've been meaning to call you." And then I'm like, LinkedIn? I had totally not posted on LinkedIn for 2 years. And this guy read it. It triggered something, but he wasn't ready at the time.
Right.
And 2 years later, the phone rings. And the thing about a lot of the things that we do for marketing, you have no idea who read that.
Oh, right? Yeah.
And you have no idea if they're going to be ready 4 years from now. And they come back and hit you again and like, oh, well, now I'm ready to engage you. It's weird. I mean, how do you know, how do you put a metric on that was successful?
Right.
Yeah.
And which one of those things worked? And how do you rinse and repeat? It's weird. It's hard to figure out.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And especially with consulting, with what you do and with what I do with product development, every client is the lifetime value of a client is pretty high. I mean, much higher than, if you compare that to selling like a standard, just a consumer product where, a consulting service is much more, the revenue per customer is a lot higher. So yeah, you could just get one great lead and, you do one little thing, you do one post, and then a couple of years later that turns into a client, and boom, it took a while, but at the same time, you're still getting a ton of value from that in the long run. And then obviously if you're really consistent about it, you're doing that kind of thing, you're posting frequently and you start to get some traction, you get more and more people on a regular basis, then you're going to see even more value. But yeah, it's amazing, especially with consulting, how you can do one little thing, it works and it hits and it pays for itself and then some.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. And you can't predict it and you can't refine it. How do I know, the badly written post that was, years ago and it resonated with somebody? Like, how do I rinse and repeat that? I have no idea.
Yep. Yeah. That something is again, you never know what that, when I line up with clients and I talk to them about consistency, I think consistency of posting, whether it is on LinkedIn or social, wherever you did get a client or have some success, even though it was 2 years, like a post you did 2 years ago, you're like, how my mind is not even there no more. Whatever that was, it was like you said, a badly written post and somehow it resonated with that individual. But again, I really think as long as you stay consistent on a platform, whether it's LinkedIn, and I think LinkedIn is a great platform to utilize, especially for businesses because you're talking mostly business owners, right? And so that makes a big, impact there. But I mean, again, like consistency, post what's on your mind, document and just whatever it is, you just go along the whole route. And I really think, again, you never know. And how do you measure that? I don't think you can, because how can you go back and say, well, dang, man, I posted that 2 years ago. Now let me see how long it takes for another person to reach out from this post. Is it another 2 years? Because I mean, you can't, you just got to be consistent and go back. And you said it's a bad written post, make it sharp, make it better.
Yeah. Get that much more
just
engagement.
Adapt it, right? So
yeah, I don't know. It's a tough, it's a tough deal. I don't know how to repeat that. And, my philosophy now that I had that unfortunate experience, I'm like, well, okay, I'll just keep posting on LinkedIn. So, so I'm top of mind.
Right.
And I realize now that a lot of these posts are, nurturing, I guess you can call it, where I just, oh yeah, that patent thing. I want to talk. Yeah, he's the guy I wanted to talk to. And I'm just kind of hanging around.
Exactly. Keeps you top of mind, and it helps with algorithms too, right? Like LinkedIn wants you to be, they want you to engage with their platform as much as possible. They want you to pretend like no other platform, nothing else exists in the world, and you're all in 100% on LinkedIn, which obviously nobody is all in 100% on any platform usually, right? So, but the more, like Clint was saying, the more you do on, the more consistent you are, the better it is for actually reaching your customers or your potential customers, and for the algorithm for the platform that you're on. So, I think it is tough to measure that ROI. You kind of go with a baseline with what's working short term, and then anything else that comes along is like gravy on, on top of that.
Exactly.
So
yeah, it's tough to measure
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if it's 1 out of 1,000 people that read that post,
Yeah. And a lot of times, so I think that's what a lot of people don't realize is in business, the numbers. Like I remember explaining this to somebody, that the numbers game of it, and then they were kind of amazed with how, how low conversions are. So you run an ad, or you post something on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever. And you might have 1,000 people see that. And you're probably let's say out of 100, make it easier. Out of 100 people who see that, maybe one person clicks, between 1 and 10 if you're doing incredibly well. Right. And then of those 10 people, let's say, who click, maybe one person purchases. And if you're lucky, and those are actually really
10 to 1, that's glorious.
Yeah, exactly. That's what. Yeah. So really, you're looking at more like, 1,000 people view, 10 people click, one person purchases.
Yeah.
Oh, even that.
And even that, that's usually 1 to 3%. You're doing 3% conversion once you've already gotten somebody over to your website is actually really great. And especially for higher ticket products and services like what you're doing.
Yeah, I started out as a patent agent, and I didn't know where to start. I need to find people who need patents, and so I started going to networking meetings. I started writing a blog. This is 2003, maybe. The people that came in over the internet were terrible. They were, they're bottom feeders looking for cheap. They wanted low cost. They want, and so that was a tough client. They ask too many questions. They're too needy, and they don't have money. And I really realized something about pricing. If you price yourself low, you get treated like that. I happened to stumble into a gig as a solo attorney where Microsoft started sending work to solo and small firm people. And I actually tried out. I was one of the first people to try out for their little program, and it was slow going. But once they started sending work, it was glorious. It was fantastic. They were sending tons and tons and tons of work. It was ridiculous. And I was just grinding out work like it was going out of style. And I was having a ball doing it. I had the opportunity to co-found a company with Bill Gates's technical advisor, which was, pretty interesting. So we started a company out in Seattle area. And, and I went in-house, and I got to work for free. My lifestyle went different, it changed. And there was a point where I had burned through my cash, and I needed to get a salary. And he said, fine, whatever you need, just tell me what the number is. I'll pay you. Not a problem. And so I gave him a number that covered all my expenses. I had not been on a salary for 15 years at that point. And all of a sudden I had salary to cover all my expenses. name your price, salary, any what, I had to be reasonable because I had ownership in the company. I didn't want to, my goal was not to make $1 million, but, cover my expenses. And I tell you, the most interesting part about that is I felt trapped. I felt trapped by a salary.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm able to go hustle up some work and find a new client and onboard them, I make more money, right? It's upside. When I'm a salaried and I work till 10 o'clock at night or come in on the weekends, I get the same salary. It's like, I felt like there was a ceiling.
That's the thing. Yeah.
And it shocked me. I was surprised. I had worked as a salaried engineer for a bunch of years. I knew what that felt like, but having been away from it and living kind of that entrepreneur, gotta hustle all the time, man, I was surprised by that. Really shocked.
Yeah. So Russ, I want to talk about your business model now in your business,
Sure.
Your IP business, because I think it's really interesting. It's something that a model that I've thought about when I worked for an engineering consulting firm. I really wanted to do this, but I think it's tough. And that is you help finance the upfront costs of a patent for your clients. Maybe not everybody, but some people, and you have to qualify. I think that's really cool because it puts, you have skin in the game. So you want to only work with the companies who, and the ideas and technologies that you think are going to be really valuable because, you've got some interest in it being successful, and you're going to work that much harder probably, to make sure that it is successful. So can you talk about how that works and then how do clients pay? It's after the patent's been filed? Is it with, is it with earnings after the patent becomes revenue positive? How does that work?
Well, this whole idea started because I hated the conflict of interest between the patent attorney and the inventor. The patent attorney makes money by selling hours, by selling patents. And I've had my share of inventors come in with an idea that you just put your head in your hands and say, no, please don't do this.
Right.
And they're convinced that it's going to be a great idea. And, I don't think it will be.
But a new perpetual motion machine or something
perpetual
like that.
motion machine guy calls like once a quarter. I get cold fusion guy about once a year too. They always seem to find me, but I can't tell them no because I'm their attorney. I'm their agent. You want a patent, you go to a patent attorney and they are legally, morally, and ethically required to do that, to write up the patent application the best they can, send it to the patent office, no matter how bad the invention is.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was working for that attorney, when I first started, he really turned on the schmooze for inventors. If you tell them, oh, that's the best invention I've ever seen today, and oh, congratulations, this is a really big step for you. And this is going to, and you make them feel warm and welcome and addicted. They'll come back for more and more patents all day long because the patent attorney is the only one who loves the idea.
Right.
Yeah.
The customers don't like it. Nobody else but the patent attorney does because they're paid up front.
Sure.
And that's that conflict of interest was, how do I build a business model that gets around that? And the business model is that I'll finance the patents.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially I built it like a leaseback model where you don't have to own the asset, you get full control of it and you can pay it off at some point in the future. And the truth is I've been doing this for I've done a couple dozen deals like this, and I handcraft it and I try different pricing structures. I try different payback mechanisms and so on. But in general, we structure it like a loan, and the loan becomes due when the patent issues. And so typically we pay interest only payments until, there's a little bit of a heartbeat of a payment that you got to keep going. Then once the patent issues, which might be several years down the road, if we design the patent system that way, a couple of years down, we can do it fast or we can do them slow or whatever. But say 3 years down the road, the patent comes issues, then the full amount will become due and you get 3 years or so to pay it off. And so instead of front loading the cost, we backload it and let you, pay it off over time.
I mean, I think that's a really cool way to do it. And if people or if clients are smart, they'll use that time to really dig in and find out what the real value of their product is, and test market it, get it out there, and make sure that they at least get some good feedback and make sure they're on the right track with the idea, see if they need to change anything, go through, spend some money for product development and test marketing and all this stuff, so that when they need to start paying you back, they're already hopeful. If everything goes well, they're cash flow positive, right. At least they're making some money with it.
And in fact, I usually want the entrepreneur to start a lot of that stuff. I want them to do some test marketing. I want them to build the prototype. I want them to start taking risk off of this business before I do the patent.
Yep.
Like one of the biggest mistakes people make is, they have some idea and then let's write up a patent and let's file the patent today. But that's where we have the least amount of information, right? We haven't built the product. We haven't cost reduced it. We haven't done it in volume. We haven't done our marketing message. We don't really know what the customer wants. Filing a patent at the beginning is almost always the worst thing you can do. You want to wait until you know more. Wait until you solve that engineering problem of, I kind of know this doesn't really work, but I haven't really fixed it yet. The fix that you're going to make is the same fix that all your competitors are going to make. And
that could have a huge impact on the claims that you write.
Absolutely. And so you really want to get a patent on just that thing that your competitors that problem that your competitors are going to have to solve later on down the road.
Right. Because if you write it, if you write it in the beginning and you write claims around something that ends up not working, and in the meantime, your competitors figure out the right way to do it and they patent that, they just totally bypass your patent, and you just wasted several years and a bunch of money. I had that happen with a client. He came to me after he waited until his patent had been issued. His patent had also been written really, really, really poorly, in addition to not covering the best features of the product. And it was actually written, I'm not actually sure how anyone would think this was a good idea, but it was written so that there were like 4 or 5 main features of the product. And the way that he wrote it was that each one had to be true, to make it part of the IP. And if any one of those things was taken out, then literally somebody could come along with an inferior product, less features, but it would bypass the product, the patent protection, which was just the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. But so he kind of tossed that money down the drain and had to rewrite it. I think just start from scratch. He couldn't even do a continuation, I don't think.
Oh, poor guy. I mean, that happens all the time. But, part of the problem is just the legal system.
For sure.
If you're a first-time inventor, if you're like when I went to that patent attorney who was on my hockey team, he wanted me out of the office. He did not want to talk to me. He did not want, because what am I going to be to him? I'm going to be a one and done. He's not going to make much money off me. I'm going to hound him with all kinds of questions.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a needy client. He's not going to make money off me. But if he could get, some big corporation that's going to send him 100 patents a year, well, that big company, that big client is going to get, the top,
attention.
They're going to get the best treatment. But as the independent inventor, the first timer, nobody wants to deal with you, and for good reason. And so you typically get the bottom of the barrel. Now, I look at a lot of part of my business, not just financing the patents. Now we can do insurance on patents. We can give you essentially write an insurance policy that will allow you to enforce your patents on an insurance policy. So you're not paying out of pocket to go after a competitor. Or defensive, where you're selling a product and somebody sues you. You can insure for that. We can also do loans using patents as collateral. Like there's one company that did $100 million loan just on a IP portfolio. So we can finance the companies, and all that stuff's available, but like nobody knows it exists. That's a part of the, that part of the ecosystem is kind of left on its own, mostly because somebody wants a patent, they go to a patent attorney, and the patent attorney knows how to do they're trained to get stuff through the patent office. Right. And that's where their duty of care ends. They're not responsible for making this thing into a multi-million-dollar project. That's yours. Exactly. You know the business, you're the entrepreneur. My job is to provide this one tool for you. And so there's very few people that kind of cross over from how do I create this asset to how do I create a valuable asset? Mm-hmm. And ever since I had that conversation with that one attorney, I've wanted to reverse engineer that patent system. How do I figure out, is this invention going to be good? Is it going to be valuable? How can I enforce it? How can I sell it? Who does it read on? How do I make something valuable? Not how do I make a plaque on the wall? I can do those are easy. How do I make one that's really valuable? That's a whole different art in and of itself.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, Russ, and with this conversation and where we're at right now, I really think this ties good into the follow-on question and some of the stuff you've already touched on. But there's a myth that getting a patent ensures success. But in reality, a patent might not be valuable and you still have to fight it. Can you talk about that and what are some situations where it's not smart to get a patent?
The myth, the patent does ensure success of the patent attorney. Okay. Don't miss that out. 100%. I'm a patent attorney. We got to eat. Okay. So, there's a trade-off with everything. Life is a bunch of trade-offs, and patents are no different. When you get a patent, you're trading off your trade secrets, and in exchange, you get this thing called a patent. Now, Andrew, you just said, gave one example of somebody who got a patent that turned out to be worthless. Right. A lot of people will get patents on things that turn out to be undetectable. Think about some machine learning, AI, blockchain nonsense, algorithm. I could never detect that a competitor is using my algorithm. So why would I put it in a patent? If I put it in a patent, all I'm doing is saying, okay, here's everything that's in everything I was thinking about, everything, here's my whole business plan.
Puts it out there into the public domain.
Here, have it for free and then compete with me. And you go to a patent attorney and they're going to tell you, well, maybe you shouldn't do this, but I want one really bad. Well, I'm your agent. I have to do it.
I'll do it. Sure.
It's not that the patent attorneys are bad people. It's just, this is what the relationship means. Right. Mm-hmm. That if you want one and you insist on it and you write a check, you get one. And there's a lot of examples of things that are undetectable that get patented. And then you look at them later and just, you could have had this huge competitive advantage. and you washed it all away because you got a patent.
Right.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, you're putting it out there. You're putting it out there for people to copy if they want, because you're going to, at the end of the day, you really are a lot of things are going to get copied.
No doubt.
And you really can't avoid that. And that goes into Clint's question about how do you fight a patent, and
yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. There is this big discrepancy between, I have a patent and, I'm going to be rich and famous. What happens when somebody knocks off your invention? Well, you kind of look around and patent lawsuits are brutally expensive, in the $3 to $5 million range. And people don't have that kind of cash. Okay. And even big companies struggle with, $5 million outlay that I didn't expect is really tough. One of the routes is you go to contingency fee attorney, and you call up, this is the ambulance chaser side of patents. I'll do it on contingency and I'll take some percent. Mm-hmm. And it's not small, it could be 40 to 60%. And then, by the way, you've got to pay for all the expert witnesses. You still have fees and stuff. It's not cheap, but that part of the industry exists for, to help out people who can't afford to enforce their patents, and they get derided as patent trolls or whatever. But, they're a very, very important part of the ecosystem that makes sure that patents can be enforced.
Yeah.
The alternative is that you can buy insurance, and insurance for a startup company, I think a patent or two, or you can actually get a reasonable amount of enforcement coverage for like $250 a month.
Wow. Yeah.
It's not, it's not going to get you to the Supreme Court and back. Okay. But it'll be enough that when somebody infringes, that you have a hammer, that you can pay the attorneys to go start negotiating something with them. And it might be a license agreement. It might be them to cease and desist or whatever.
Yeah. And that's something that most people aren't thinking about. Patent insurance. I honestly hadn't thought too much about that myself, but it makes a lot of sense. And, it's like I tell my clients, hey, it's, patent is only as good as the amount of money and the amount of effort you're willing to defend it with.
Yeah.
So if you have just enough money to get a patent, and then that sort of makes you cash poor, then that's going to be a problem, because there's a lot of other things that you need to do. And then if you need to defend it, well, that's it. I mean, I guess you could definitely say that there's value in just having it as like, people who have security systems on their homes. You put a security sign out front that says, hey, this house is protected by whatever, and some people put them out there without actually having the home security system. So at least it's like that, where, okay, people are less likely to mess with you and mess with that idea probably. But if they want to go after you, a lot of times they're just going to go after you.
One of my friends here in Colorado had a business where they had an automated chatbot kind of piece of software, and they struggled to sell it like all entrepreneurs do, but they finally landed a big company. I think it was some big broadcast company, like NBC or somebody, who had, lots of websites, and they put this product on one of their websites. Well, all of a sudden, NBC with this product becomes a target to litigation, and a patent troll tuned up NBC with a lawsuit for my buddy's product that was on their website. And of course, NBC says, this is your problem, and passes it down to the entrepreneur who he didn't have patent insurance at the time. He didn't have the means, they were just guy in his garage level kind of business. NBC was looking at him this is your problem. You have to indemnify me. You have to deal with this lawsuit. And they looked at it and said, we can't afford it. And so they shut the whole business down.
Yeah.
Everything they worked for just
gone.
What are my options?
Yeah.
I'm not making enough money to justify a huge lawsuit. I can't do the contingency fee thing. They just had to shut down. And
it's crazy.
That's a lot of small companies, who's going to sue you if you're selling $100,000 worth of product? But you sell $100,000 worth of product through a big name, some marquee customer or whatever, all of a sudden you're a far bigger target than you thought for inbound litigation. And, you pick up a typical policy will cost you about, somewhere on the order of a percent or two per the coverage value. So $1 million of prepaid legal fees to go after, indemnify or go after somebody would cost you about $10,000 a year. So, less than $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
So you work it into the budget and you can live it. It's something that you need to think about as an option,
especially when you lean very heavily on your IP, when that's a big part of kind of the backbone of your business. Maybe especially with like medical products, let's say, where it's really, really important to have IP because there's big guys, out there who are kind of ready and willing to knock you off and eat your lunch. So when you really have that you need to rely on your IP. That makes a lot of sense. And like you said, there's cases where it's not as important to maybe even file for a patent at all. And you just kind of, if you do get a patent and, you have that protection to some degree, but you just kind of roll the dice and go for it. But that insurance sounds like a great idea.
Yeah. And you're right about medical device. It's very common for the big players in the medical device industry to just rip you off and then, come sue me.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got your lawsuit. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll fix that.
Yeah.
They don't, that's just efficient for, this notion of efficient infringement. It's what they do. And that's how the game's played. So you got to know it.
Yep. Yeah. You got to know what niche you're in and how to protect yourself. So Russ, through your entrepreneurial journey from the highs to the lows, what has been the hardest thing for you about being an entrepreneur?
The hardest thing is probably it's a blessing and a curse, that thing we talked about earlier where, I don't know where the next, where my next meal's coming from. You can't really forecast very far in advance, how the business is going to go or where the sales are going to come in. You trust that they do. That is hard. That stress level is, for me, just never goes away. But I'm always thinking about that. Oh yeah, I gotta, should I lay around on a Saturday afternoon or should I knock out a blog post? I probably should do that.
Yep.
That's always there. But when you really kind of embrace it and say, this is my motivation. You use it as a motivating factor. It's not the carrot, to me, the carrot of, I'm going to be, richer than God and have all this money, and whatever infinite success looks like. That's not really as motivating as, oh shoot, I really gotta put the effort in here. It's time to really, pour the coals to it and make it work. That to me, it's it's the flexibility of it, the ability to try something new is so much fun.
Yeah.
You just think, you know what? I'm going to try going after a different market segment. I'm going to try going after something, I've always wanted to do this. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, and if it doesn't work, that fear of failure that I was in corporate America and, I wanted, I want to run my own business, but I got this, I got a nice healthcare plan. I get 3 weeks of vacation or whatever it is, I can't get rid of that. I can't lose all that. The fear that you're going to fail at that is once you kind of taste it a little bit and know that you're not going to fail, or you come up to that edge, you're like, you know what?
I'll figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. The world doesn't come to an end. I'm not having to live underneath a bridge. It's
right.
Things are pretty good.
I kind of thought that was going to happen when I quit my job and just jumped in and went full time with my business. It was a really scary moment. But when you realize, that you're going to figure out a way to get through things, you might have to tighten your belt, or you might have to, you've really got to think on your feet. And I think I think it really sharpens you quickly, because you have to fend for yourself. And something you said earlier really resonated with me with when you went back to a salary after being away for so long, you felt like there was a ceiling there. I think that's the difference. I think the exciting thing is every day you could land a client or do something in your business that takes you to that next level. And you could, from one year to the next, I was telling somebody about this recently, because they were asking, how does your salary compare to when you worked for another consulting firm? And I said, well, first of all, it's better. Second of all, it could be double next year. And I can't do that working for the other company. I just can't you can't do that. You can't be like, hey, you know what? My salary was this year. Can you give me 100% raise? Is that, it's like,
you're going to get like 1 to 2, maybe 3.
Yeah. You get a few percent if you're lucky, and they'll make you feel bad about it. And, and then it just keeps going on for years. And it's like, so that's another huge difference, is that potential. And
I would agree. Yeah. I think I agree 100%. Yeah. I think when it comes down to it as an entrepreneur, the sky's the limit, but you also have, the ceiling could be as low as you want it to be. And the ceiling doesn't even have to be there, right? Because you do have to get out there and grind and make things happen. You got to position yourself, like I said, to be in position to land a client. Communication with individuals is
you got to show up.
Exactly. Showing up every day. Yep. That is what people don't understand. And a lot of individuals that I see fail or give up, right? Because they don't show up every day. They think it's going to be easy because they see someone like, Andrew, myself, or anybody else. It's like getting where we got right here, right now, has not been easy. The path is not just like, okay, I decided to do this, like the Field of Dreams quote, you build it, they'll come. Yeah. Oh, you have to make things happen.
That's not true. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, you don't understand. I had to grind to get where I'm at and position myself, and some of the decisions I made, and I really believe in the law of attraction. And when you start lining yourself up, you start believing, you start actually, telling yourself that you're going to be successful. That stuff comes to fruit when you plant those seeds, and it helps me get up in the morning. Like you got to look at the person in the mirror every morning and tell yourself, whether you're stressed out or not, look, I'm about to make it happen today. I mean, that's it. That's my attitude. Every morning I get out, I might not want to get up. I'm like, dang, dude, 5 o'clock or maybe 10, whatever time I wake up. But I'm like, you got to get up. You got to keep moving forward and make things happen, because again, I'm in control of this, right? Like it's my business. I'm in control of my success and my failures. And once you start understanding that, and once you start knowing that you actually have the control and stop blaming everybody else about your lack of success, man, it makes life so much easier.
You know what changed for me too over the years is that when I was sitting in the cubicle, I'd think, okay, here's what life would be like if I was on my own doing whatever. And, here's what my income would be. Here's what my daily routine would be, and I'd do the daydreaming bit where you'd think about all that kind of stuff. Or when when I would start a new project or, start a new business line or, whatever else kind of in my journey, I'd take a different step and this is what I envision life to be like. I quit doing that.
Yeah.
I used to live in that kind of world of, this is what I'm going to do. And here's my goal. This idea of having goals doesn't work for me. If I give up those goals, if I just say, here's what I need to, planting the seeds through this marketing effort, joining this group and getting to know people in it, or, whatever the thing that I'm doing that makes sense for the business. Does this make sense for the long term? Yes, it does. Okay, I'll do it. And I'll do it to the best of my ability, as much energy as I have for that thing. And I will see where it goes. And the best part about this is seeing where the journey leads. I never would have thought that I would have been starting up a company, in Seattle with, a whole bunch of really smart people. I never would have thought about that. It happened. I was like, this is interesting. Let's try that. And what am I going to learn from that? The other thing I do is I try to take on things that will add to my skill stack. I want to know, I was thinking about inventing for a living. I wanted to do product development back when I was at HP and doing, working in the cubicle. And I had the opportunity, and I was, my idea was, hey, I'm going to invent stuff. I'm going to write patents on it, and then I'm going to license it to people. Well, I had the opportunity to take a job at Waterpik up here in Colorado. We make shower heads, the shower massage by Waterpik, or a lot of oral care, toothbrushes, and that kind of stuff. And I wanted to be on the inside of a business that was licensing in product, licensing in ideas. I wanted to see how it worked. I wanted to see how they thought, how they evaluated the ideas, what they did. And by the way, I got all that information and they paid me, right? I'm there as an engineer and, doing engineering work, but I was watching how all this stuff worked. And so that when I got to the outside, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to license into these kind of places. I knew what to expect. And, I try to look for things that I can do next that will add to that skill stack. Sure. How do I get some experience in this that I don't have today? And then intentionally take a job or a project or whatever that will help me learn that. Yeah. And when you do that intentionally instead of by accident, I did it mostly by accident. I think that there's so much, you can be much more efficient in your time and more doors open. The better the skill stack, the better the doors that open. You don't know where they're going to be or when they're going to show up, but they're there.
Agree 100%. So Russ, as we wrap up this episode, I feel like we could talk all day. If you can leave our listeners with one piece of advice, and you might have already touched on it, what would that be?
Just keep plugging forward. Don't think about what you're doing and why, and what am I learning from this exercise, and how do I build, how do I build my skills, use the skills that I have where I can maximize their potential. I have a good skill. I want to do that more, but what other skills need to complement that, and try to force yourself to learn those and force yourself to get good at those other things too, and not be just the one trick pony. And just be deliberate about choosing opportunities so that you learn, choosing opportunities that add to that skill stack that you have.
I love that. Yep.
Well, guys, I think that's a wrap for this episode. And from the both of us, Russ, we want to thank you for taking the time into your day to join us and adding value to what we're doing on our podcast, brother.
Really enjoyed it. Thanks for your opportunity.
Yeah, it's been really great talking to you, Russ. And like Clint said, we could probably talk to you for a while, so we'll have to have you back on at some point. Thank you all so much for listening to That Entrepreneur Life. To learn more about what Russ is working on, check out blueironip.com. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe to our podcast, and don't forget to download our free ebook about the success mindset at thatentrepreneurlife.com.
Thanks for continuing to support what we do as entrepreneurs, and don't forget to join us next week for another episode of That Entrepreneur Life.
Thanks for listening to That Entrepreneur Life podcast. Be sure to visit thatentrepreneurlife.com to join the conversation, access our show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode as we continue to add value. Until next time.